Flatland of Magic, a novel of God's Legion, by J.T. Dowdy. Chapter 4. Many of you will not believe this, but the most ignorant and clumsy tool using sentient is an apex predator on whatever planet they happen to be standing on. We all know a soldier is deadly, and a skilled, disciplined soldier even more so. However, the most deadly individual in all of creation is someone who has nothing left to lose, and who is backed into a corner to where logic and reason no longer have any meaning. Something said at every small unit tactics class at Legion basic training. A few hours later at the center square of Tir Narnog, Centurion Aemon was handing out the drop wings only given to local planetary troops which served alongside the Legion. It was an old tradition for his people to supply them for non-Legion troops at the onset of any operation, similar to militaries which gave out medals of some form for being both air and space qualified. The small pin was a checkered circle, signifying the head-on view of a gremlin gunship with upswept wings like it was falling into an atmosphere with fire trailing behind it. He had called all of the assembled sergeants to him and gave them each a bag of the tokens while explaining the significance. He then pinned all of the sergeants personally as they stared at the large transport hovering a few inches off the cobblestone street with a mixture of fear and awe. To show his men there was nothing to fear, Margrave Aiken was the first to lead his mount up to the strange device. His griffin was having none of something it had never done in its life, and the noble was forced to grab the reins hard to pull the animal's head around to where he could stare into its face. He said something to it in a calm but authoritative voice which the semi-intelligent animal understood. It tried to pull away from him, and the noble punched it in the face with an armored gauntlet. "Do you want to continue?" he asked in a bored tone. The animal let out a shrieking cry, but the nobleman held the reins tight and kept staring at the beast. Eventually, it gave up and lowered its head in submission because it knew its rider would not give in. Its first steps were as tentative as a feline on an uneven surface. Then it hopped on and jumped high into the air at the feel of cool metal on its taloned feet. Pawing at the deck a few times and sniffing at strange surroundings, the animal looked to its fellows below and let out a series of screeching noises, which apparently meant it was safe. The others below all began to mill about, as if almost eager to follow the larger creature, since they were bred to follow. After a half-hour of loading, the gremlin which had been floating above came down to pick up the Legion Master and his cadre. Lucifer called over to the transport, carrying the Margrave once they were all in flight towards their destination. "Margrave Aiken, can you hear me?" "Yes, Lord," the Margrave said, still not knowing by what title he should call the other man. "I do not see a speaking stone." The elf's voice only carried a slight tone of worry, though he was no doubt holding on to one of the hanging handholds for dear life. "Look to the wall by where the pilots are. There is a square box with a grill covering it." "What are pilots?" Lucifer sighed and groaned. "The teamsters at the front of your flying wagon." "Oh," the voice of the noble said, then suddenly got louder as he stood next to the quantum communicator. "Is this the speaking stone?" Lucifer turned the volume down on his end after grimacing at the sudden explosion of noise. "Yes, you found it." "This is powerful magic. It is like being on a barge in the air." "I am glad you like it. We should be at the Count's place in a couple hours." The noble could not help himself as he interrupted. "Forgive me, but this is a 3-month-long journey. Even if we were on water, we could never cover so many leagues in such time." "Margrave, my ships are much faster than yours. Please believe me when I say we will be there in a few hours. I have ordered my teamsters to land in the Count's front yard. When we do, Could I ask you to order your men to ride out to wherever the trolls and dryads are having their issues? I need to know why they are fighting, but I would like you to remain with me to see firsthand what I see, as you are acting as my sister's eyes and ears. I will do as you ask, but I have one question. Will my mount fit in your smaller wagon? I do not wish to walk all over Talum after we reach our destination. He meant the land under their feet. The angelic pilot of the gunship Lucifer was on slapped his co-pilot to take over. He quickly turned around in his seat to glare through his featureless helmet at his boss, the statement obviously meaning, "You get to clean up the mess if one of those things takes a dump back there." No, Lucifer replied to the Margrave, making a gesture to the angel as if to say, "Do you think I am that stupid? Your mount will not fit back here, and besides, my ship will take its place." Very well. Would you let me do the talking with Count Orla when we arrive? He is a bit eccentric, and we came to an understanding sometime in the past. I shall be guided by you, Margrave. Count Orla's domain was one long crescent-shaped mountain range with snow-capped white peaks. Various castles and redoubts were built into the sides of the mountains to overlook the valleys which held the only highways through the territory. Due to the miserable climate and poor growing conditions, the people who lived in the Count's lands were forced to farm in the caves of the mountainsides, or on step terraces. Thanks to magic, plants were able to be grown in raised beds and in hanging gardens. For those people who required meat in their diet, they were forced to pay to have it brought in at great expense, as small quadrupeds were rare here and could outrun most people who tried to hunt them. While the Count was a redcap and his people were some of the most violent in Mab's universe, he ruled with an iron fist and didn't tolerate his people behaving in any way, which upset good social order. Lucifer's gremlin was the only one to come to a hovering halt in the courtyard of the Count's formidable fortress, while the others circled high overhead, invisible to the naked eye. The Margrave had been transferred earlier, minus his mount. The soldiers who had been on guard had seen the ship coming in and raised the alarm. There was a full complement of armed troops in a shield wall, with battle mages in the rear and on the walls with terrible magic ready to be released at a moment's notice. Margrave Acon stepped off first, with his helmet under his left arm and his right hand clearly away from his long sword on his waist. The legionnaires came next, and they were all touching their rifles in case they needed them, while keeping their muzzles pointed at the ground. Aemon's contubernium fanned out, behind the elf in a firing line, because, while they understood the fear of the soldiers witnessing something they had no idea of, it did not mean they would roll over and just allow hostile actions. The nobleman called out in a loud voice, "Margrave Acon to see Count Orla on orders from our sovereign, Queen Mab. Someone send for him at once." The Count had been up and about, because he stepped out from a side passage. He flung his arms wide and had an infectious grin on his face as he rushed forward to embrace the other noble with a crushing back-thumping greeting which clearly bothered the elf. "Ah, Acon, my dear bitter enemy at court. How have you been? It has been too long, my boy." Seeming to notice the hovering object he had never seen before, and the beings in livery he did not know, he asked in a hushed whisper, "Who are these people who have a floating wagon?" Acon knew he had to act quickly to gain the upper hand with the redcap, who put on airs of forgetfulness and eccentricity, but was actually a formidable opponent, both mentally and physically. Without missing a beat, the Margrave took a step back and spoke in a voice where all of the soldiers present could hear. "It is my distinct honor to introduce the brother to our sovereign, Lucifer." The Count did not miss a beat either, as he held out a hand for the 10-foot-tall creator to clasp his arm like they were old friends, while Lucifer's twinkling eyes told the redcap he understood the game being played. "Oh, the pleasure is mine, old chap." He then looked to the other noble in mock shock. "Achon, my boy, you never told me there were ladies of such ravishing beauty coming. This just won't do at all. We must see to their comfort first, before we get all of the boring tedium of introducing one's titles and lineages, which could go on for so long we might all waste away from starvation." He turned around to point to one of his retainers. "You, dear fellow. Yes, you there. Run along and tell the servants to bring chairs to my study for the ladies' comfort. And do have refreshments set out. You there, men? Put those weapons away, would you? These are friends." He bowed and gave a grand flourish to the party of immortals. "Please come into my abode and rest a while, honored guests." He turned to walk away, and then called back over his shoulder. "That means you too, elf." "Just a little eccentric, you said," Lucifer murmured to the Margrave as they followed their host. The nobleman grimaced and replied, "He is even worse at formal gatherings." The inside of Count Orla's castle was less ornate decorations to show off his wealth, and more of the things the Legion appreciated, such as stands of weapons and armor every 25 feet. All of the Count's staff were visibly armed, even the servants, though they were not allowed to possess swords. Instead, they had single-edged knives, which blurred the definition of what a sword meant, referred to as messers by some. There was one glaring problem with the castle architecture. The Creator and Angel were all having to bend down in the hallways, since this place was not built to their universal standards. Of particular frustration were the mortal-sized door frames, which forced both the Legion Master and Aemon almost to their knees. "Count?" Acon asked, after one door in which the Angel's armored knee clanged loudly on the stone floor. "How much farther is it to your study?" "Oh, it's just around the corner." The Count looked back, after catching the tone of the other noble, to see the armored Angel struggling to make it through the doorway. "Dried blood," he cursed. "Forgive me, I never thought. Only trolls are your size, so I never." Lucifer raised a hand to say it was okay, but Aemon purposely ground parts of his armor on the stone door frame to produce a shrieking noise which made people wince. "May we have our picnic outside?" the Centurion asked. "I like your house's decorator, Count. Very manly and proper. But I am afraid I will break any furniture you have in here, and I do not wish to be rude to the man offering beer." "Will you have great difficulty making it back to the courtyard?" Aemon winked at the nobleman. "I think I can manage so long as there is a drink in it for me." "Of course." The Count hurried to the end of a hallway and called out, "Bring the refreshments and furniture to the courtyard. Oh, and bring a pair of stout tables and benches as well." There came a chorus of, "At once," and "Yes, my lord." As the Count was hurrying back, he paused and went back to the corner to poke his head around again. "Make sure you bring the cask of Merton Double Dark up from the cellar, too." Once everyone had made it back out to the courtyard, they found servants already working on erecting a covered pavilion with heavy tables underneath. Benches that looked more like boot scrapers made for giants had been brought up, and were being manhandled by teams of servants grunting under the weight of the heavy wood. The serving staff were efficient and quiet, and were ushered back inside by the Count's chamberlain, who waited politely to the side for further instructions. "Come, sit," the Count said, gesturing to the tables and benches. Aemon grabbed the bench, which took 8 men to carry, and drug it to the spot he chose with one hand. Lucifer and the Count seated the ladies like proper gentlemen. Delia winked and mouthed to Francesca, "We should have them do this more often." The Count remained standing to pour the drinks, some kind of greenish liquid which smelled like alcohol, and the mug of beer for the Angel in armor. "Help yourself to whatever you like at the table. Now, Ercon, please do not be rude and offer the introductions you failed to at the onset." Margrave Acon cleared his throat while doing his best to not roll his eyes or grind his pointed teeth. Count Orla, this is Creator Lucifer of the Legion. The lady to his left is Princess Delia Monsignor of the Akaru Empire. He did not know what the Akaru called their nation, but he added the last part as embellishment. To the right is Her Majesty, Francesca Altdorf of the Succubi people. Fair ladies, welcome, the Count said, rising to his feet and kissing the backs of the offered hands. Since both of them had learned quickly, this universe functioned on archaic customs and offered them to the noble. Acon continued. The man in the armor is Orman, of the Legion. I am afraid I do not quite know what his military rank means, other than he is an officer. Have you a title, sir? The Redcap asked, noting the tall being was indeed an army officer of some kind, and such people in his universe held noble titles. Aemon nodded, raising his beer mug of a dark, chewy beer which would pass for a full meal in salute. Lucifer added for the Count's benefit, after it became clear the angel was not going to elaborate further. His title brings him some distress, as it is a heavy burden to bear. He is the commander of my bodyguard, and one of my advisors during times of war. In times of peace, he assists with the running of the government in we do not really have a title for it, but a regency would be apt. Aemon mentally snorted, and he called to his adopted father's mind. We have times of peace? The reply from the Legion Master was bitter. No, but this is a man who needs to be impressed if we are to get anywhere with him. He is far smarter than the Margrave, in case you missed it. The Count seemed impressed by the collection of titles which came to pay him a visit. Then again, he was a consummate master of the great game and could easily have faked his reactions. I am honored that all of you would pay a visit to my poor county. However, since you came with Margrave Acon, I can't help but think this is more than just a gentle ride through the countryside for fresh air. You are correct, Acon replied. The Queen has asked us to come look into the troll and dryad problem on your western border. The Count sat back in his chair, raising his glass of green alcohol to his lips. In reality, he was wondering if he should be insulted or not at the assumption he was unable to do his job. He carefully did not look at any of the people seated around him. My people have been watching them, carefully, and from a distance, of course. Neither side has resorted to open hostilities, even though a few skirmishes have broken out from time to time. The trolls have been cutting down trees to build large bonfires, and the dryads are agitated by such barbarity, of course. I sent out a few riders to the capital last month to request more soldiers for when this inevitably boils over. For now, the dryads are bitter, but they have not resorted to more permanent solutions. Keyword being, for now, Lucifer added. The Count raised his glass in acknowledgement. Correct. They will only tolerate so much, my orders or our sovereigns notwithstanding. Have you talked with the trolls to see why they are doing this? Francesca asked. The Count made a sour face. Majesty, no one can talk with a troll. They are incapable of speaking the common tongue and are frightfully stupid. They usually stay in this mountain ranges, shadows and forests below. The Queen does not even require them to pay taxes, because only a fool would find what they have to trade of any possible value. What do they trade? Delia asked. It is not for polite conversation, Highness. The too pale woman placed a hand delicately on the Count's arm. She batted her eyelashes and said, You are a true gentleman, Count. But I do not sit at home working on needlepoint while the men go off to do war. I am sure by my manner of dress, you have no doubt gathered, I am not the sort of noblewoman you are used to." "Princess," the Count was shocked. "A battlefield is no place for a great lady such as yourself." It was the armored angel who spoke next. "She gave me hell." "Could you explain?" the Count replied, confused. Aemon continued. "She used to lead a band of several thousand privateers." He did not say pirates and brigands. Instead, he chose a similar profession where one was in service to a government. "Though she may seem lovely and charming, she is made of iron and thorns." He kept his face from showing emotions as the artwork from the book at the auction flashed in his mind. The men under her command were trained to a very high standard. She held her own for many years against us before finally sitting down at the peace table. The story was true, so far as Delia actually had led a band of pirates. The Count looked impressed, more so because most women of station in Mab's society were more of caged birds rather than leaders of their respective peoples, Mab being one of the few exceptions, of course. "Were you really that good?" the Count asked, with a twinkle in his eye. Delia held up the golden ring with a cut sapphire, which had been on the hand she had gently patted. "I would rob you blind if you gave me enough time." The Count accepted his ring back and slid it onto the finger where it belonged. He continued as if she was one of the men. "The trolls take their foul-smelling feces and roll them into little balls before encrusting them with whatever shiny objects they happen to come across. They then bury them until they practically fossilize. Apparently to them, those balls are acceptable currency for trade." "Was that really so hard to say, Count?" "Highness, in my experience, noble-born women in my queen's realm have perfected the art of fainting on command. Of course, it is a fantastic ploy if used correctly for a minor noble to challenge his peers. Wait till some unsuspecting victim says the wrong thing, then have your lady faint before challenging the evil mongrel to a duel for your lady's honor. That is fairly smarmy." The Count laughed. "Of course, hence why I said only the minor nobles with no prospect for advancement use it. It takes all of the fun out of the game if it does not matter what you say to give offense." "I would have to agree with you," Margrave Ekon said. Lucifer became serious. "Count, the real reason we are here is to check on the Fomori and see if they have come across the mountains from their underground strongholds." The Count made a noise in the back of his throat, which was reserved for distressing bowel movements, hinting at his opinion of that race. "It is my belief they have found some way to bypass your checkpoints, and it is they who are forcing the trolls to hack down trees and build bonfires to scare them off." The Count looked skeptical, but he dare not disagree with someone of the same station as his queen. "Does my queen share this belief with you?" "She does." "Dried blood," he muttered, then looked to the chamberlain standing patiently at the side. "Bring Lord Nashorn to me." "Yes, Lord," the man said, bowing his head and hurrying away. The party spent the time asking polite questions of the Count, who in return was happy to answer, though his answers when it came to the security of his domain were vague and expertly crafted to say as little as possible about the number of men under his command. Lucifer had finally asked the question he came all this way for. "Count Orla." The tone of the question made the Count become suddenly wary. "I have been told Baoban Sith had taken up residence with you. Is she currently disposed so that we may speak?" The Count's expression took on a genuine look of pain. "No, she is not. Perhaps it is best if I show you if you do not mind the low ceilings." Lucifer stood up. "Lead on." The Count dabbed at his lips with a silken napkin, then rose to lead the way. Aemon and the legionnaires remained outside due to their bulky armor, while everyone else followed the Count. The nobleman led the way high up into the castle to a larger door, which opened into an opulent chamber fit for someone of the highest station. He unlocked it with a key from a pocket and let his guests enter the room first. The room was filled with a lady's possessions, all neatly arranged in a way which suggested a man hadn't done the decorating. Yet the room was cold and lifeless, with a thick layer of dust on everything, the Count explained. Many hundreds of years ago, I was paying a call on an old friend in the Eastern Territories when I was caught in a fierce storm. I could see the lights from a castle up in the nearest mountain, and slowly made my way there through the driving rain. The gates were open, and I saw a lady wearing a great cloak with her hood pulled up. She beckoned me inside, and I later found out it was Lady Sith. The Legion Master nodded. Of course, he could know if he looked at the data about a given event, as all things reverberated through his creation. However, he had sworn to himself he would not do such a thing unless absolutely necessary. Otherwise, the crippling boredom of knowing everything at once would drive him to insanity. The Count was staring straight into his eyes, so he nodded and said, "Please continue." Lady Sith offered me the hospitality of her house to ride out the storm, which I took, naturally. Since she had no servants in attendance, I helped her make food and set a table. We talked while we slowly ate, and I'm afraid to say we both lost track of time. It soon became morning, and the storm had ceased its rage. But I did not leave, and she did not ask me to. To my recollection, I believe I stayed in her castle for possibly 2 months or more, as we grew fonder of each other. She was terribly lonely, you see. He paused as he waved his hands. Of course you know that about her, if you are asking. My apologies. It eventually came to the point where I was forced to leave to attend to my obligations and duties. I bid my farewells, and she stopped me to ask if she could come stay with me. Normally I would have said no for the political considerations of my bachelorhood, but she was so lonely I could not help but accede to her request. I told her yes, and hired the best porters I could find to carry what belongings of hers she wanted to take. They arrived and made this room for her based off of the sketches of her own room. "I take it she never came to your residence?" Delia asked, guessing at the next part. "No, Highness, she never came here. The porters said she instructed them to bring everything from her room, and that she would follow after a few days, once she had taken care of something. I always found that a bit odd, but it would have been rude of me to pry into a lady's personal business. I have waited for over 200 years now for some kind of word from her. I kept thinking she would either show up or send me a letter asking me to send a carriage for her, or at least ask for her possessions back. I sent riders to look for her in case she had gotten lost. None of them ever reported finding a trace of her, and they said her castle gates were firmly locked and barred. I have also been to her castle a few times myself since then, and she was not there, at least as far as I could tell. That place was as quiet as a crypt." "Of course," Lucifer growled, turning around to walk to where he could be alone with his thoughts. The Count looked concerned as he leaned in to whisper to Delia. "He seems distraught. Were the two of them?" He left the question hanging for propriety's sake. Delia shook her head. "Not as far as I know, but that was before I took up residence with him. To my knowledge, she is just a family friend." "Count Orla," Lucifer interrupted, coming back to the group. "Would you please look at this and tell me if you saw it anywhere, those months you spent with her?" He held out Baobun Sith's copy of Memoirs of a Fey Queen. The Count took the large book and flipped it around in his hands while studying it. "It looks vaguely familiar, but there were so many books in her library. It would be impossible for me to." His voice trailed off as a memory came back to him from those times. In Lady Sith's massive library, which had books on shelves all the way up to the high-vaulted ceiling, there was a large painting hanging on one wall. Back then, the Redcap thought the painting was just ancient and poorly cared for due to the quality of the picture. Now, however, the Count realized the faded appearance of the person in the portrait was not from age. His eyes widened as he looked to the Legion Master and saw the same faded and battered clothing. The Count had not paid much attention to the face in the painting, as it was also barely recognizable, but he did remember the silver hair tied back into a ponytail with a piece of ribbon, and the piercing silver eyes. They were staring right back at him, as if from the wall. Dried blood. You are the one from the portrait. The caption on a placard at the bottom of the painting read, Melek Taus. When the Count had asked who this person was, the answer Baoban Sith replied with did not make any sense at the time. She had said, the Old One. Each word had been spoken with the utmost emphasis and respect. She then had gone on to explain, the one who teaches those like our Queen how to make the worlds we inhabit. She then explained everything she knew about the being, which was a considerable undertaking which took many days. Orla thought Lady Sith was exaggerating for dramatic effect, but she then shook her head and pulled out an exact copy of the book had been shown by the Creator, standing in front of him. The book clearly stated in his Queen's own words most of the things he had been told were true. The sane Red Cap went down on one knee to bow his head, while Margrave Aiken looked at his fellow noble in shock. Revered one, the Count said, forgive me, I did not know who you were. I stand ready to assist you in whatever matter you require. What are you doing, Orla? Aiken asked. Fool, Orla snapped. Do you have any idea who this man is? A peer of our Queen. Peer, the Redcap choked out, as if such a word was even close to the mark. Did our sovereign not explain who he is to you? Peace, Count, Lucifer said. Understanding may come to him in time, and for the love of the gods, please, get off the floor. I do not want such displays. Immediately the Count compiled, while his fellow noble was thinking his way through what he had just witnessed. Margrave Aiken, my younger sister charged you with finding out why the trolls were cutting down the Dryad's trees to build bonfires. Will you require assistance in this task? My task is to find Lady Sith, as she sent me a message to get me to come here. But now she is nowhere to be found. The Margrave's natural tendency was to say he could handle it, but the old soldier in him knew a couple hundred men would not be enough to handle an incursion in force. He sighed and said, I will require assistance if it turns out the Fomori are on the move. I can take 1 or 2 in a fair fight, and my men are highly skilled, but the Fomori like to swarm such as the insects do. Lucifer nodded. Aemon, request another ride for your burn and send them with the Margrave. You will be staying with me. He looked back to the nobleman. You will have at your disposal the best of my bodyguard, the best in the Legion. Their ways will seem odd to you, and I highly encourage you to listen to their advice when it comes to handling matters. Their leader is older than your Queen, and has seen more combat than your heart has beat in your entire life. Most of them have, in fact. The ancient being was not boasting, rather stating a fact. Margrave Aiken nodded as he swallowed hard. I will not be throwing lives away needlessly, I swear. If it pleases you, I would ride with you. My second is more than capable of handling reconnaissance. As you see fit, Count Orla. Yes, old one, the Count replied. Don't call me that. Are you fit to ride with me? I think you will want to come and find the answers to your questions about the Lady Sith." The Count bowed deeply as he grinned. "I would be honored to accompany you, Lord Melek." The Legion Master groaned as he pinched the bridge of his nose. "I'm going to throw you off this mountain if you keep doing that." "You would hurt yourself lifting my considerable girth up, so I rather doubt you would, old boy." The Count patted his gut and chuckled to himself. He moved to the door and called to a waiting servant in the hallway. "Bring a soldier's pack to the courtyard for me." "At once, Lord," the servant replied, hurrying away. "Oh, and tell Lord Nashorn he is in charge till I get back. He gets to do my paperwork today, since he cannot be bothered to come quickly when I summon him." The servant wisely scurried away faster as the party began making their way back outside. The Legion Master paused to look around the room one last time before closing the door, as if some small, minuscule detail would give him a hint as to why he was summoned here by an old friend. Count Orla screamed as the gremlin banked to the side and he was pulled down by gravity into his acceleration harness. He had never flown before, and the pilots had taken pity on him right until the last descent, when they opened the side doors and banked towards the ground. As the gunship came to a hovering halt, the Legion Master quickly undid the ratcheting harness, securing the nobleman, and bodily hauled him to the grass outside, where he violently threw up. Thanks to the expert hands of the Legion Master cheating like he always did, no puke landed on the Count's clothing. When the noble had finished retching his lunch up, he got up, while waving a helping hand away to stand on his own 2 feet. He swayed back and forth a bit and was pale, but otherwise fine. "Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth," Lucifer said. Francesca still had not gotten used to flying either. She reached into a pocket and withdrew special gum which had anti-nausea medications and a crisp mint flavor to cut down the taste of bile. She handed one of the pieces to the Count, who took it and held it in his hand, because he had never had chewing gum before. "Unwrap it and put it in your mouth," the succubus said. "It has medication to help with the nausea caused by motion. Do not swallow it, just keep chewing it till there is no more flavor, then spit it out." The Count did as he was instructed, and went into a coughing fit from the powerful mint explosion assaulting his taste buds. The half-chewed piece of gum flew from his mouth as he coughed. The Legion Master slapped his back to help with the spasms, and the succubus held out another piece. The Count took it and tried again. He made the same face as every child did when stepping into frigid air to see their breath. "This is amazing," he said, chewing the gum. "How did you put the sensation of winter in this?" "Alchemy," Lucifer replied, looking up at the massive green crystal gate, which was firmly shut, surmounted by high, thick walls. He began walking towards it. The Count nodded to the succubus. "Thank you for this, Majesty. My headache is already subsiding." Francesca handed half of the small pieces over. "I still have not gotten used to it either. Where I come from, such things are considered heretical and carry serious repercussions." "You came from a land like ours?" "It is only similar by having equivalent technology, and we do have magic. Our magic comes from our Lady Gaia, who would be the equivalent to your Mab, instead of from within ourselves. We had to pray to her and ask her to do what we wanted." The corner of Francesca's mouth ticked up in a faint smile. "If you were not pious enough to her, well, her blessings would never come until you returned to her good graces." The Legion Master walked right up to the massive crystal gate which was 30 feet high. Doubtless there was a system of pulleys and counterbalances which would assist whoever threw the right levers on the inside to open it. "Lord," the Count said, I hope you have a ram, because that gate is warded against magic the same as the walls around the capital. It would take the largest of my engines days to knock that behemoth down." "Never fear," came the calm reply from the ancient being. "I have a key. You might want to stand well off to the side." He casually placed his hand on the crystal and closed his fingers. The plaster-like flesh of a creator bit deep into the gate's surface, and when he hauled back with a cheating display of strength, the stone holding it cracked and broke. A blizzard of stone exploded outward as the gate, easily weighing tons, was tossed behind the creator as he calmly walked into the rock dust, as if this was something he did every day. A loud crash came from several hundred yards away. The Count was staring bug-eyed at where the gate had landed, then back at the smoky hole it came from. He rubbed his eyes as if they might have been playing tricks on him. He looked to Margrave Aiken as if to ask, "Can you do that?" The Margrave looked just as disturbed by what he had seen as his peer. The redcap caught up to the creator, who was slowly walking through a high portcullis, and asked, "How did you do that?" The Legion Master grinned and said, "Practice." Count Orla shook his head side to side. "No, I mean, how was that physically possible? The leverage required, the strength of your bones, other factors. What you did was mathematically impossible." Lucifer stopped to stare with a raised eyebrow at the fat redcap. "You who live in a realm with magic, understand physics? I thought you just waved your hand and chanted nonsense till things just happened." The Count snorted indignantly, then smiled as he leaned towards the much larger being for a conspiratorial whisper. "In case you had missed it, I am not an uncultured barbarian savage like most of my people or those of elven persuasion." He made a production with a wink to the ladies who had joined them in the smoking hole. "I can even count past my fingers and toes. I know. It is like finding a vampire who can speak without slurring because of his chompers, or a wolf man without lice." Delia laughed, then snorted like an animal, which sent Francesca into her own laughing fit. The princess raised her pointer fingers to hang down by her canines, and Francesca began laughing again. Lucifer continued to the castle's main door, while the laughing women stumbled along behind. "I think she likes me," the Count remarked to the creator in a quiet voice. "Both of them would rip the soul from your body if you tried something untowards." "Could you say that again?" "Somehow I do not think I understood your words." "They subsist on sentient souls, Count. Both of them. Where you take your nourishment from meat, vegetables, and bread. They require the spark of your existence, the same way a vampire with his chompers needs blood. You could try it if you so desire, because they are free women to do as they please, but it would be a one-time experience, and so I would not recommend it." "I see. Thank you for the warning," the Count replied, putting his hands in his pockets. Then, just as Lucifer was about to knock on the front door, he asked, "Do you think Lady Sith is still here?" The creator pushed hard on the double doors to break the iron bar, which held them secured from the inside. "Do you think I would be breaking her things if I thought she was?" The redcap said nothing, as he did not know enough of the man's personality to comment on the matter. "Has she always lived alone? This is a lot of castle for just one person, and I never saw or heard another person when I stayed with her for those months." The Legion Master looked around the courtyard square before entering inside. The castle was a massive building made of the same magic-proof seafoam green crystal as Mab's capital of Tirnanog. It had a set of crenulated walls around it, seemingly built to keep curious people out, rather than defending against a besieging army. A few small stone buildings dotted the massive courtyard, but as to their purpose, no one knew. There were long dead trees standing in neat rows like an orchard, and the dried husks of herb and flower gardens next to a large fountain covered with bird droppings. As the Redcap has suggested, the eerie place was as quiet as a crypt in the perpetual twilight gloom of this universe. The Legion Master entered the large foyer with a twin set of grand staircases on either side. A marble statue of a woman with large, intricately carved feathered wings dominated the space. The figure had a sword in one hand and a large book in the other, the expression clearly asking which one the onlooker preferred. You could see the bunching muscles of the woman in the marble, even underneath the clothing. The statue was so lifelike, it was disturbing. "My brother does impeccable work," Lucifer muttered. "You can almost smell the oil on that sword, or the mustiness of the pages." "This was not here a couple 100 years ago," the Count said. The sculpture was so perfect in its detail, there were even small ripples to simulate the texture of cloth. "My brother Elohim made this. I assure you there is no finer sculptor of stone in all creation than him." "What was here before?" "Some large animal sitting on its haunches. It was snarling, I think. Was it also lifelike?" The Count was about to say yes, but looking at the perfection which was before him now, he knew the other was not even a fraction as good. It was of inferior quality. "Interesting," Lucifer said, moving to go up the right-hand staircase towards where he remembered Baoban Sith's library to be. Everything was covered in thick layers of dust. There were quartz crystals glowing with perpetual magic to provide a dim illumination. The hallway walls were covered with priceless portraits of people who mattered from all over Mab's realm. The rugs were intricate beyond measure, but ancient and worn. Plinths and racks held weapons, armor, and other priceless artifacts from who knows where. Massive chandeliers made from assorted gemstones hung at the intersections to cause a cascade of multicolored light like the tiny wings of fairies, their price also beyond measure. The library was imposing with its numerous shelves running all the way up to the ceiling, 3 stories above. Many wheeled ladders sat idle on their rails, which were caked with a half-inch of dust. On a bare wall hung the portrait of the Legion Master, where the Count remembered seeing it. The plinth beneath it, which would have held Lady Sith's copy of Memoirs of a Fey Queen, sat empty. "I wonder," Lucifer whispered as he placed the book back where it belonged. Nothing happened. He sighed and muttered, "What to do now?" "Should we check the other parts of the castle?" Francesca asked. Lucifer shook his head. "No. If she left something for us, it would be here. Count, I am assuming you spent the majority of your time with her here, right?" "Yes," the nobleman replied. "Besides the kitchen, dining hall, and that, He paused to look at the 2 beautiful ladies before blushing. "The horrible bed she slept on." Lucifer chuckled. "Baoban's a lesser creator. She has as much need for sleep as I do. The kitchen and dining hall are also not necessary for her existence. Her problem is she never learned to really fit in with people. She likes to talk, but only with fellow bookworms. You are lucky you are a well-read man, Count." "All true gentlemen are well-read," the Redcap replied, as if such things were inherent. "Baoban absolutely hates people who do not share her interest in books. Oh, she enjoys seducing men for fun, but once it becomes apparent they are not a bibliophile, she kills them." The Count had gone pale, and he walked over to a couch to sit down. "Dried blood. I did not know that." "Any port in a storm sometimes has its price. So I see. I take it you also enjoy a good book, then? Delia snorted and replied with a tone which mirrored her frustration on the topic. He always has his nose in one. Do not get me wrong, I am not an uncultured barbarian either, but he carries the art of reading to an obsession. The Legion Master sniffed as he smiled and looked down his nose at the pale woman. It is through the works of others that we find the solutions to our own daily problems. Besides, we should always try and better our station in life. Knowledge is the start of such a journey. Pale hands went to modest hips as the princess glared at her lover. Yeah, okay there, bud, she argued. Just what station should I try to elevate myself to now, huh? I am a consort of God. That's you, in case you missed the memo. I live in the same house when you bother to look around and notice we're in it. From where I sit, I think I have gone just about as high up the social ladder as I can. The Legion Master had no defense against the princess's argument. He looked to Count Orla, who was trying not to laugh, as he held up both hands in surrender. The Margrave and the succubus were studiously studying something on one of the bookshelves, as if to say, they were not going to be helping. The redcap cleared his throat and said, "Don't look at me, old boy. Something tells me anyone joining you will be on the losing end of the lady's impeccable logic. You're so much help." "Thanks," Lucifer muttered. The Count stood up from his chair to bow mockingly as the two women gave each other a victory high five. Oh, one does one's best. On a serious note, how would Lady Sith hide a message for you if she were to leave one? He gestured to the groaning bookcases. Would she leave you a note in one of these tomes? It is possible. I know she periodically changes her catalogue in here when she reads them all. Let's check the shelves for a book called Fafnir Rising. It was the book which started her collection and subsequent addiction. It would be the logical first place to look, since that book is never discarded. Delia was not just a beautiful noblewoman from a rich house. She had a lightning-quick mind for logistics, and even helped Morana in her work when she was bored and had spare time. She took one look at a collection which easily numbered over 40,000 separate pieces and let out a high-pitched, sardonic laugh. Yeah, no. How about you cheat or something, because it would take us days to find that book in here. If it even is here. If it still even exists, because it has to be as old as you and turned to dust by now. Did I fart at a funeral or something to earn this abuse today? No, but you did cut short our vacation to bring me to a place which is starting to remind me of home. Lucifer ignored her and turned to the Count and the Margrave and explained, "Her home world is so polluted. There is a brown fog which covers everything. No plants or animals exist anymore, and the sun does not shine." The Count grimaced. "I have no idea what a sun is, I am afraid, but that does sound absolutely dreadful. We must do something to ease the lady's boredom. It is our duty as gentlemen that the fairer sex be provided with sufficient amusement." The Count winked to the ladies, who in turn looked at each other and grinned as he was proving to be an amiable travelling companion. The Legion Master caught the now mischievous looks directed at him and cleared his throat while spinning around to walk towards one of the shelves. "Oh my, would you look at that?" he said to no one in particular. "I seem to have found the one item out of many which would possibly point in the right direction." He grabbed one of the wheeled ladders and drug it over to a seemingly random spot. Climbing up to almost the ceiling, he reached out and removed a hard-bound book before sliding back down the ladder to land on the stone floor with a heavy thud. The book's cover was made out of leather, so brown with age it was almost black. Everyone in the room could hear it crack. even though the creator holding it was barely touching it. There used to be gilded letters for the title, but those had long ago flaked off to become only a memory. Carefully, oh so carefully, the ancient being took the book over to a table to lay it down. Trying to open the cover to the first page caused the spine to break in half. "Screw it, I'll buy her another," the creator grumbled, giving up on trying to protect the ancient book. He flipped the pages looking for a slip of paper in between them, or some handwritten note in the margin, and found only nothing. He had an eidetic memory, but saw no discrepancies with the book in front of him. He slapped his hands on the table and walked away once he had looked at all of the pages. "This is total crap," the creator growled, gesturing in frustration to the entire collection. "I know she left me a note, but just where the hell is it?" The Count pursed his lips and asked a question he felt the tall man should have known the answer to. "Highness," he asked, "our jolly travelling companion was able to find a single piece of straw from a straw stack with little to no effort. Why is it exactly he seems incapable of finding the answer he seeks?" Lucifer was sighing as Delia clapped her hands together in mirth. "Oh, Count, I am so glad you asked, since I am still vexed at my vacation being cut short. Let's see now. How does this story go?" "Oh, do stop me if I get the small details wrong, love." So, old Crotchety here does in fact know everything that goes on in his creation, because of math or something us mere peons have no clue about. The problem is, he has shut himself off from, well, think of it like if you knew every word on each of the pages in every library and could listen in on every conversation in your queen's domain at the same time. You also knew where every animal was and what it was doing, and every grain of sand blown by the wind. The Count held up a hand while grimacing. "You have painted a vivid and disturbing enough picture. Such an ability sounds like absolute agony." "If you only knew the half of it," the Legion Master agreed. "To keep my sanity, I am forced to sequester myself from the knowledge of such things, and to limit myself to just be a regular person who is forced to experience things as you would. Of course, I can open myself up to glimpses of what is transpiring, or what has already happened. I can even see the multitude of possibilities for the future, should I wish to. Because such an option is always too tempting, I fragmented myself into individual pieces which limit how much I can see and know. Does that make sense?" "It does. But I surmise the real explanation is far more complex." "Not really. To view the bits and pieces of what I need, I must be more of the original, which, let us just say, is not the most fun person to be around." Both Delia and Francesca shuddered in unison, yet it was the succubus who spoke. "That is the one thing I really do not care about our relationship." The Count clearly looked like he wanted to ask something, but cleared his throat and looked away because he was a gentleman. His proper nature made Francesca laugh. "Oh no, it is nothing like that. Well, I want it to be, because it is my nature, and the political ramification of a more intimate involvement would be worth more than all the wealth in the known universes." Since the lady offered the information, the Count continued the conversation. "Do you not already have such political considerations in hand? You are a member of his court, are you not?" "You are correct. Yet Delia outranks me politically, even though I am a ruling monarch, and that makes me jealous enough to want what she has." The succubus artfully flipped her hair over her shoulder, which was designed to give the much taller creator a perfect vantage of her ample cleavage from where he was standing. The Legion Master artfully ignored the woman and moved to the door to head somewhere else in the castle, while gesturing to the Count to follow. "Delia, On the third shelf from the left wall, there is a book I want for Baobhan, putting us through this, titled A Midsummer Meeting. Would you grab it for me, while the Count and I get the message she left behind for us? It would be a book you would enjoy. Consider it a peace offering for cutting your lounging short. Once the Count and the Creator were outside, out of earshot, the Redcap asked, "Her Majesty seems rather put out. She is not getting what she considers her right?" Margrave Achon came with them, as to not be seen improper as the only unescorted man left in the presence of ladies. "Her continued presence in my entourage has been a problem for me," Lucifer said. "However, it would be rude of me to kick her out for simply existing. She is beautiful enough to turn the head of any man. Hence the problem, Count." "I do not understand," the Redcap replied, following the Creator back down one side of the grand staircase. "Both Delia and Francesca require the souls of others to survive. But Delia can control her urges. The princess's people were made immortal by requiring a sentient soul, though she was not made with an overpowered sex drive like the succubus. Francesca's people were made and convinced the only way they could receive nourishment was during the act of sex. It was built into her nature to ensure her people's slavery to their maker, as only their maker controlled their food." "That's monstrous," Orla supplied, as his counterpart nodded his agreement. "So what you're saying is, both are essentially the same, but one can control their urges, while the other cannot help herself." "Yes," the Legion Master replied, before bellowing back up the stairs. "Loud noise." He ushered the Count and Margrave back and toppled the stone statue of the winged woman, worth more than a planet, to shatter on the floor. The statue was hollow at the base, and there was a rolled-up parchment paper tied with a blue silk ribbon. He picked it up and continued talking as he made his way back upstairs at his stereotypical, lethargic pace. "If I just gave Francesca what she wants, she will grow bored and look to other men in my floating castle. I honestly do not care what she does, but I do value the lives of my people. I can feed her what she needs by just touch alone, so she is not in danger of starving to death." "That is dreadfully sad," Orla said. "You are the object of her desire because of what? Trophy status?" "Pretty much." "You know," the Count chuckled, "most men would kill to be in your shoes, my boy. To be surrounded by a bevy of beautiful, dangerous women who look good in armor and carry weapons. Were I younger, I would try to get into your court just to be seen in such a ravishing company, as something tells me those are not the only such prizes to be found for an eligible bachelor like myself." The ancient Creator stopped so suddenly the Redcap almost ran into him. He turned around and asked, "Only if you were young?" The sudden question gave the Count pause. "That is what I said." "Please, you know what I meant. I am loyal to my sovereign, sir." The Legion Master grinned. "I can talk my sister into not caring. I like you, Count Orla. I think you and your people would make a fine addition to the Legion. Besides, you are immortal for all practical terms and conditions. You are stuck where you are and how you are, forever. If you joined my people, you would be free to explore the known universes and do whatever you wished. Since you have started down the path of calculus, I could open the doors of your mind to other scientific pursuits and give you the finest equipment for serious study and observation." The Count's eyes narrowed, but he did not dismiss the offer outright. Surely there is a catch to such a magnanimous offer. "There are only 2 conditions," The first is a fixed 5% tax for all Legion citizens. You can pay your taxes in time, money, or the goods your people produce, if such is your fancy. The second is, if I ask for soldiers, you as a leader provide. If that sounds like a good deal, ask Francesca about it, since she took her people who wished to join through the process. I only ask you to consider what I offer you. Oh, there is one other small thing. The Count was prepared for the real twisting knife thrust, but was surprised to hear. If someone does not wish to stay part of the Legion, they are free to leave no questions asked. That would go for any people of yours if they wish to go somewhere else, or return to my sister Mab. Delia and Francesca rounded the corner from where they had obviously been listening to the men-folk talk. "Count," Francesca said, "I know you do not know me, and have no reason to trust me. However, from one person who grew up in a world very similar to the one you have, I urge you to take the Master's offer." "Master," the Count replied with a sneer. The succubus waved her hand. "Not that kind. His official legal title as the head of the government is the Legion Master. Because he changes his name every so often, due to those facets he talked about, his name is never printed on any document, just the title. We shorten it to Master to keep it from being cumbersome." "Ah, my apologies then. Tell me then, Majesty, why should I accept this offer in your opinion?" "I will tell you the same thing as another creator in my realm explained it to me. He will test your patience to their absolute limit. But you will have at your command power the likes of which you cannot imagine and will never be able to fully understand. There was more to it in private, but the core of the argument is this. The Legion is the strongest nation in existence, and this is not an exaggeration, because I want to sell it to you. I still do not fully understand all of what I read about, but from what I have learned, they are the largest, strongest, most technologically advanced and prosperous nation in all of the known universes. I swear to you as a fellow noble, on my honor, there is not a single downside to joining. My people have thrived and become more prosperous than I ever thought possible, and he has not thrown any new demands on my people." The Count showed no expression before he looked away from the woman's serious brown eyes. "You really believe what you just said?" he asked. "Yes, I do. I will need to run it by my barons, but I do swear I will explain everything you just said." "Orla," Echon spluttered, as this was becoming too much for him. "You cannot be serious." "Echon, my boy, you are not my superior. Please keep your pointed ears out of my affairs. I will have to report this treasonous talk to Her Majesty. Tattle away to your heart's content. However, if you were paying attention, I think that offer was open to you as well. I cannot believe you are even considering this." Count Orla looked to Lucifer and said, "Please excuse us a moment." He then turned back to his peer without his customary jocular airs. "Echon, what have we accomplished as a united people in the last 10 million years?" The Margrave blinked, not expecting the question. "What are you asking?" Orla pressed his point. "What about in the past 150 million years? The answer to the question is nothing. We have done nothing of note. No new large cities have been founded, no new realms of note, no new members of the peerage at court. More than half of my people do not even know how to read, because our society places no value on the commoners knowing anything other than how to sow grain or mend a fence. Do you remember the university in Lund?" "Yes. When it was burned to the ground by the Sluag uprising, no one cared. That was what, 5,000 years ago. I should not have to remind you that the land on which the college was cleared to be replaced with expensive cordwainers for the nobles of Lund. The university there had the best classes on arithmetic and physical sciences and anatomy this side of the nearest shield wall. We do not do anything, Akun. We merely moulder as we live day by day. Come on, man. Do you not wish for something better than doing the same paperwork day in and day out? Ichon closed his eyes and bowed his head. He was silent for a long moment before speaking. Our sovereign designed our realm so that everything has its place. Orla was about to argue, but the tall elf held up a hand. What would happen to society if the commoners could read, Orla? It would be anarchy, chaos. They would no longer sow the fields or tend to their duties because their heads would be perpetually lost in books. I will not argue against your appraisal of our seeming stagnation. But how will society function other than how it is now? The Count had no answer, and he looked to the Creator who obviously came from another culture with different ways. Lucifer replied, "We have a roughly 97% literacy rate in the Legion. What we have found is that, generally, educated people have a higher work output. Then again, most of our work is done with the assistance of machines." Orla raised his hand to ask, "Do you mean like a smith's hammer forge powered by a water wheel?" That analogy is close enough, yes. However, the implementation of such devices leads to other problems, such as factory workers turned into mindless slaves to operate the machines. A government must amend its laws when machines become involved, but we can go on more about that later. No society is perfect, but I can tell you, we get by more than fine with an educated populace. "Well, Achon, what say you to that?" the Count asked. The Margrave was frowning. He shook his head and took a deep breath. "I cannot fault your interest in this subject, especially considering your correct assertions about our society. I will not inform the Queen of your talks." Akon held up his hand before the Count would be forced to say thank you. "I warn you, though. If the Queen deems you to be a traitor through your actions, I will not hesitate to raise my sword against you." The Red Cap held out his hand to his opponent at court. "You are an honorable adversary, Margrave." The stoic elf cracked a smile as he responded to the gesture. "Let us not be hasty now. However, we have prattled on long enough. Please, Lord, tell us what the letter you found says before he becomes more insufferable." Lucifer untied the ribbon and unrolled the parchment where all could see. The flowing script was written so close together, it was like spider webs. "Brother, I regret to inform you in post that I will not be there when you finally arrive. No doubt you have tried to find me and failed. I am sorry, but I am forced to conceal my presence for the foreseeable future. I am being hunted by someone aligned to Baal and his first creation, whom I believe to have our condition. As I run, I will be leaving clues for you to follow after, since I cannot just tell you where I am going for obvious reasons. The next place I am going is the 14th place we met in person. Be safe, Baoban Sith." "That's it!" Lucifer raged, smashing his fist into the stone wall behind him to shatter a heavy block and turn half of it to powder. "You're kidding me, sister, leaving breadcrumbs for us to follow because someone I can easily kill is hunting you. How retarded are you? Here." He thrust the paper at the Count before storming away to rage in private for a moment. "What am I missing about this?" the Count said, rereading the note. It seems straightforward enough. The Margrave accepted the letter to also read it. He shrugged and handed it back. "It seems clear to me as well. The lady is being hunted, and she doesn't wish to give an advantage to the hunter should one of her missives be intercepted. Delia was looking concerned at her lover. She shook her head and explained for the two noblemen. I think you two will understand a being such as your queen. But this first creation, Lady Sith mentioned, was, as the name implies, the theoretical first making of God. That is the individual pacing in the other room there. He made one great mistake in that he made no rules governing biological or abiological life a long time ago. Worst mistake I ever made, the Legion Master roared, in a voice loud enough to rain dust from the ceiling in the next room over. Delia continued, I am not trying to be insulting, gentlemen, but you do not really have the technological understanding to grasp the actual difference of this. I want you to imagine the difference between yourself and your monarch. She has to think faster than you do, right? She is also far faster and far stronger. Imagine whole races of people who are like her. How do you fight such people? Oh, and by the way, they hate the master with a holy passion. The Count was quick-witted. I see. So, you are telling me this is what is driving the Fomori from underground? Them, or those allied with them, Lucifer replied, returning. The first creation has been imprisoned for a long time. However, small numbers of them have found ways to escape from time to time. It would only take one of them to either organize or drive the Fomori. Delia, Francesca, should we follow the trail of Baoban, or should we deal with this new threat which is now confirmed? Delia chewed on her thumbnail as she thought. We will eventually have to do both, but for now I say we should not show our hand too early and follow the trail. We can always come back later and smash whatever we need to. I do not mean to be insulting, gentlemen, but nothing here is a threat to us. Not true, Francesca interjected. Margrave Count, if you were going to use magic for combat, how exactly does that work? Could you demonstrate this for us, please? The Redcap turned and gestured to his political rival. Echon, do you want to do the honors? Amuse yourself, the Margrave replied with a wave of his hand. The Redcap grinned as he then asked, for the demonstration, am I fighting one opponent or many? Give us a demonstration for both, please. The Count turned to go outside, where he would not wreck anything inside Lady Sith's home. Once outside, he picked a single stone of one of the outbuilding walls for a target and said, fighting a singular opponent with my given affinity, I would use pinpoint fire. Only fools tried to hold the fire unless they had an absolute mastery of their craft, and even then, such a feat was risky. Instead of being a fool, the Count conjured a marble-sized ball of flame an arm's length away from him. It was already traveling in a circular motion and flew around his body to generate speed before flying straight like a sling stone loosed from a sling. The ball of fire whooshed through the air until it landed with man-killing force on the stone wall. The tight ball of flame bored a hole straight into the stone like a drill. The Margrave added, I have seen battle mages have as many as several dozen balls orbiting them as they loose them towards their targets in rapid succession while generating more. Orla nodded and said rather self-deprecatingly, I must confess I can only keep track of 5 at a time. Next up, a group of brigands have ambushed us while we ride. A pressurized stream of acid, the thickness of a pencil, spat out from a spot 3 feet in front of the Count to slew back and forth as if fighting a formation of soldiers. He turned around, his hands still in his coat pockets. Caustic and fire magic does not work so well against an opponent more attuned to wind. Plus, I must confess I am not well versed in the other affinities due to my personality. Most impressive, Lucifer said. I can understand fire considering your people's temperament. But weaponized acid? Is that not a bit risky? The Count shrugged. Absolutely. In my spare time, I enjoy making jewelry, and I like to find my own ore for a more personalized touch. It was easier to learn how to make acid than carrying around breakable glass jars in mines. Well, it took me a few thousand years to get the hang of it. He pointed down to his left foot. The pain of breaking acid flasks is a good motivator for getting it right. Francesca seemed pleased as she gave an "I told you so" look to Delia. They may not have machinery here, she said, only because there is no need for it. If I understand this right, each person is going to have specialties for magic based on what the Count called affinity, or long years of study and practice. Lady Gaia would never allow such things as combat magic, unless you were absolutely loyal to her and carrying out her will. Even then, it was limited, so as to not get out of hand. Okay, Delia agreed. I was looking at the problem wrong. Hold on, if you took the Count out of this universe, would he be able to use magic in ours? You can take the kit from theirs, and they are still allowed to live and function in ours. That is complicated, Lucifer replied. The kit were a genetically engineered species of people-sized ants, made by Creator L in a different universe. While in the current home universe of the Legion Master, he had made rules which limited the size of insects to the oxygen content in a given atmosphere. Creator L had not. The kit can function in ours because they are genetically modified and because their size is necessary to their life. The Count and the people here do not require magic to live, as it is more of something they do. An elemental from Gaia's verse could live in ours because, just like the kit, how they are is tied to necessity. Those with sufficient will to force their version of reality on mine might, keyword might, be able to use magic. But they would still be governed by the laws of said magic as they understand it. It is a murky subject for sure. I believe what you will find is the general day-to-day things would be impossible, unless fueled by heightened emotions. Count Orla rubbed his chin and asked, "Is there a way we could test this theory?" Lucifer held out his hand. "Take my hand and we can go find out. Just, whatever happens, do not open your eyes till I tell you. We will be passing through a place that is very dangerous." Whatever the Count's faults were, cowardice was not one of them. He took the offered hand and placed his other over his eyes. Surprisingly, the Margrave also covered his eyes and placed his hand on the Count's shoulder. In an instant, all three vanished from sight. The Legion Master and the two noblemen reappeared, standing next to the cube on the Legion's capital world, known as Harlock. The cube was Lucifer's palace, and it was a 3-mile in diameter chunk of nickel iron carved from an asteroid in system. Great holes had been drilled into the interior to provide natural light and allow the Gremlin gunships to land and take off from multiple landing pads. Through some cheating trick of the Creator, the meteoritic iron still had its intricate Weidmannsstatten patterns despite Harlock's damp climate, which should have caused the outside to rust. "You can open your eyes now, gentlemen," Lucifer said. "Welcome to my capital. It's not much, I'll grant, but we like to call it home." Both noblemen were looking around and seemed overwhelmed. The Creator had set them down on the side of the main road leading to the towering structure which rose 3 miles into the sky. Ships of all sizes were taking off and landing at the nearby spaceport, and all manner of sky cars were flying in orderly lines in their designated lanes. Hover cars glided effortlessly by on the nearby roads to the whine of their motors. All manner of people from different species were coming and going, wearing either the traditional black and purple colonial-style uniform of the Legion or their home garb. Towering silver spires dotted the landscape all around the cube, and the graceful curving architecture of the Legion was resplendent next to the perfectly manicured grass and flowering trees maintained by an army of horticulturalists who were either paid for their work or who were paying their yearly taxes with labor. Everything the Creator just said didn't register, as both of the noblemen from Mab's universe had their hand covering their eyes from the blinding sunlight. "Oh, crap," Lucifer muttered. "I forgot about that, sorry." "Do not be alarmed, you are not blind. The light is coming from high above, and it is perfectly natural where we come from. Your eyes will adjust in time." After a few minutes, both of the nobles were able to take their hands away from their eyes. They were still squinting from the harsh light. It was Margrave Aiken who spoke first after letting out a mighty sneeze. There are no words to describe what I am witnessing. How do you make structures so tall? I did not think such a thing was possible. "We use steel for the bones of our buildings," Lucifer replied. "Actually, we use a metal which is far stronger than steel, but you would not know what it is because you do not make fire hot enough to melt it, nor do you have the ability to dig down in the ground far enough to get it." Count Orla rubbed at his eyes as he pointed like a school child to the aircraft flying around him. "Do all of your wagons float in the air?" "Most do, yes. We also travel through the stars. Forgive me. You do not have those in your universe, and so I will need to explain what they are." He looked around as he looked for an object to use as an example. "All right. Do not look directly at it, but do you both see the bright orb in the sky above you?" Both nobles foolishly looked at it and were forced to cover their eyes again. Lucifer chuckled and continued his explanation. "The orb in the sky is made up of burning gas. While it looks like it is relatively close, it is in fact about 100 million miles from us." Being a man of limited science, Orla opened his mouth while raising his finger. He closed his mouth before rubbing his face with his hands and groaning. Akon did not understand and asked, "You seem to know the significance of what he just said. Could you explain it to me?" The red cap bent down and drew a right-sided triangle with one leg far longer than the other in the dirt. He was struggling with finding the correct words until he looked to the titanic structure of the 3 miles to a side cube of metal dominating their field of view. He finally said, "If you stand right underneath the great gates of Tirnanog, they appear large and imposing from your perspective, right? Not quite as tall, but like this behemoth we are next to now." The Margrave craned his neck to look into the sky at the cube. "I will agree. Yes. As you go back across the bridge to the mainland from Her Majesty's great gates, they appear to shrink in size due to the distance you are from them." Orla pointed to the furthest point of the triangle he drew from the 90-degree bend. "If you were standing on the mainland, looking at the gates in the distance, would you agree that the structure would have to be many times its original size to appear as large as if you were standing underneath them?" Echon was frowning, as he didn't have the understanding of math to see how this would work. Yet he said, "I would have to agree the gate would have to be larger." "What are you getting at, Orla?" The Count let out a choked chuckle and traced his finger along the long side of the triangle on the ground. "My point, old boy, is that the bridge from Tirnanog to the mainland is a little under 10 miles long. The distance he was talking about is, think of it like the distance from Her Majesty's capital to my own. How large would the gates have to be for it to appear as large as if you were standing under it in my courtyard. Ichon's eyes flew wide as the explanation clicked in his mind. It would be an impossible size. He looked back to the burning star in the sky and winced. How large is that flame? 1.2 million miles in diameter, or across, if you are not familiar with that term, Lucifer supplied. He held out his hand as if he was going to snap his fingers. Do not be alarmed by what happens next. He snapped his fingers, and the people and vehicles seemed to blur by as he fast-forwarded time from their perspective. The sun rode across the sky until it was fully dark. Both noblemen looked to each other in stunned silence, as they had never witnessed such a feat. The ancient being touched the silver pendant under his jacket to activate the public address systems on half of the planet. This is the Legion Master. We are conducting an unannounced test of the planetary power grid. Power will be turned off for exactly 30 seconds on the dark side. Morana was staged above the capital and gleefully turned the power off to non-critical systems. Stars exploded into being as the light pollution ceased to exist for a moment. Orla stayed kneeling on the ground to marvel at the splendor of what he was witnessing. Plus, he was intelligent enough to understand what he was being shown. Achon did not understand the spectacle in front of him, and stumbled backwards in terror and fell over. To the elf, it was as if trillions of eyes were suddenly opened to stare at him, and they seemed to come rushing forward to devour his being. 30 seconds passed in agonizing slowness. Then the lights came back on in sections to where the light pollution began blocking out all but a handful of the brightest and closest stars. The look on the Redcap's face told Lucifer he was going to be a new convert, and the old creator was grinning broadly. Count, do you understand what I just showed you? I think I do, yes, Orla replied. Each one of those pinpoints of light has its own ice wall. Think of each ice wall and the encompassed land from your home, like a marble floating between the lights. You cannot just walk or ride to a new ice wall like you are used to here. You must use our floating carriages, as each place is not connected, not even with water. When I am finished in your home universe, I would be happy to take you and any of your people who want to come on a tour of what we have to offer and explain things better. Unfortunately for now, we simply do not have the time. Oh, I almost forgot. See if you can still perform your magic. Aim for the center of the street. There was a glimmer in the Redcap's eyes, as he was now fully committed to exploring the idea of joining the Legion to further his own education, and becoming more than just a count in his queen's service. Focusing his will, a sputtering fireball the size of a pea appeared around his body, moving in a horrific rendition of a circle drawn by a toddler. The tiny ball of flame winked out as it spun faster before the Count could release it. He tried several more times, and each time the flames winked out. Anger was rising, and it was through the anger he was able to focus enough to cast a pinky nail-sized flame in a bounding arc, like someone flipping a coin with their thumb. The glob of fire evaporated before it could hit the ground. Interesting, the Count muttered, turning back to the Creator. The flames handled like they did when I was a child. But the experiment did work, Lucifer replied. I have a feeling with enough practice you could be your old self in no time. Margrave Achon was still wide-eyed from seeing the stars, but he had gotten back on his feet and pointed his open palm at the center of the street. Spider silk, thin tendrils of electricity crackled and popped around his fingers. There was a surge which caused the tendrils to dance wildly, but nothing happened, and the lightning did not reach past a few inches. It would seem I am less than a child, he said, staring at his hand as if it had betrayed him in performing something he had done every day for his entire life. What does this mean? Lucifer rubbed his chin. Let's go back and tell the ladies what we have found out. Lucifer appeared with the two nobles back in the same spot they had departed from only a few minutes before. Seeing no sign of the ladies, he touched his pendant and said, "We're back, love." Delia's voice instantly came back through the quantum communicator. "Sweet, we're on our way." When the ladies had returned, Count Orla spoke first, since he was still excited from what he had witnessed. "Our experiment was a success, even if a stunted one. Both of our magics were as if we were children." Delia looked to the wall where the Count had bored a hole into it earlier. "Well," she said, "besides the obvious problems that makes for us, I can think of something far worse." Francesca caught on to what Delia was thinking. "Margrave," she asked, "if you were to try and pre-form a type of magic your queen has forbidden, what happens?" Since all of Mab's subjects knew the answer by heart, his reply was instant. "The power turns in on the caster in a conflagration. I do not know why. Should the caster survive the explosion, our queen strips them of their ability to use it. Some even remain wreathed in flames to serve as a reminder to the ignorant commoners to never go against the queen's commands. Releasing stored potential energy always turns into thermal energy," Lucifer added, before grimacing and adding, "Sorry, please continue." Depending on the scale of what the caster was trying to accomplish, the resulting explosion is limited, or sometimes quite violent. "Define violent for us, please," Delia asked. "I do not understand the question." "How large is the explosion?" "Ah." The Margrave looked around the large courtyard, which was about 5 acres, and shrugged. "Would you say this enclosure is a good representation, Orla?" "I must be guided by you on this matter," the Count replied. "I have not seen anything quite so large myself, but I have heard tales of such events. Ladies, I am afraid I do not follow your line of questioning. What are you trying to get at?" Francesca frowned as she thought. "First, tell me what the rules are for being granted admittance to any court functions. Are commoners allowed to attend and air their grievances, or give statements in matters involving law?" "Of course not. The rabble are uncultured swine. Besides, they lack the self-control to control their base emotions, and would pose a danger to the peerage should they attempt to show off with their affinity, much less if their avarice were to get the better of them. Again, I still do not see what you are wanting to know." "They can be turned into living bombs," Lucifer supplied. "The people from this verse could be planted throughout creation at critical points of infrastructure or societal gatherings and cause havoc just by being there. They could pass through any scanner in the known universes because they do not need to carry an external or implanted explosive device. They only need themselves." "Are you talking about deliberate suicide?" Akon asked, clearly mortified. "No sane person would willingly do such a thing." "Exactly, no sane person. There are ways to brainwash people into preforming such an act. Extra points if they are true believers in whatever their cause is." The Count was frowning. "I see one issue with what you are insinuating. Someone such as I would stand out in your society on account of my physical appearance." Lucifer shook his head. "There are surgeons whose skill far surpasses any battlefield medic you are acquainted with, Count. Believe me when I tell you there are ways to change your outward physical appearance. Besides, people where we come from are quite cosmopolitan. I do not think your physical differences would raise much alarm." Both the Count and Margrave looked at each other, and the Margrave said, "I do not understand half of what you said, so I will be guided by you in this. My queen sent me here to report on the Fomori. Since you yourself seem agitated by their seeming involvement in this, what part do they have to play in all of this? Is all of this some convoluted plot to sow chaos in the realm?" Lucifer laughed as if the solution to the question was self-evident. "Margrave Count, if you were a commoner with no military training, and you knew the Fomori were bearing down on your village and your family." He paused to spread his hands to emphasize his point. "Would you not jump at whatever offer was extended to you to leave such a grim situation? Would you not be willing to go anywhere, do anything, to save your family or yourself?" Count Orla looked to his fellow noble with the statement of, "I know I would. I do not particularly relish the thought of being flayed alive and having my bones be turned into furniture." Ikon closed his eyes and bowed his head. "I would rather die fighting, though I see your point. How does Lady Sith fit into this?" All eyes turned to the Creator, who began walking back to the gate he had destroyed upon entering the castle grounds. "Baoban Sith was one of the pairs of eyes I have in this universe to keep an eye on things. She traded the intelligence she gathered for periodical new shipments of books to alleviate her boredom, given her nature which killed or drove off most people. I have never understood why she wanted to exist all alone when she could have lived with people who shared her passions. Well, that's not true. I absolutely understand her wanting to get away from people. I just can't get behind her viewpoint of strict isolation."